In this video, I'll be repairing this large hole in my bathroom wall caused by a large toilet paper roll dispenser. This entire bathroom is going to get renovated, and this is the first thing I'm doing. So you can see it is 4 3/4 inch high and 5 1/4 inch wide. For this, you need a pencil, tape measure, a knife. I'm using drywall screws, a drill preferably, some wooden shims. Obviously you need a replacement piece of drywall because I'm going to be doing what's called a California patch. I've got some tuck tape for the plastic behind, and you're going to need some sort of drywall compound filler or topping material and some putty knives. Now you can see there's holes in my plastic and there's dirt behind them, and that is from air being either sucked in or pushed through, and I am going to fix that first. So obviously I don't want the holes left in the plastic causing unnecessary airflow. I'm going to use the tuck tape and just cover every hole that I can find with the tuck tape, and with a little luck I'll improve the energy efficiency of my home. Now, because of the COVID-19 lockdown right now in Ontario, I'm using stuff that I tore out of my basement. So I'm just using some shims that used to hold up some drywall in the basement, and for these I'm going to drive in some drywall screws through the drywall and into the shim to hold it in place. And for each of the shims I'm going to use 4 screws, and these shims are going to provide a good solid backing for the drywall that I'm going to use to fill the hole with. Before screwing the shims in, it's a good idea to remove any chunks of drywall that might be preventing it from sitting flush to the drywall. For this one, I'm also going to use 4 screws, but I'm sure after watching me put in 6, you understand how the other 2 are going to go in. So there it is, 2 shims, 4 screws each. And those shims are going to provide a solid back for the drywall that I'm about to put in. So the first thing I did was draw out the 4 3/4 by 5 1/4 on the back of the replacement drywall I'm going to use, and then I'm just going to run the knife along the back so I could do a clean snap. Now I'm using 30-year-old drywall here. New drywall would work much better. This drywall is also painted, which is not helpful, so it doesn't rip as well as I'd like, and in fact I do mess up one of the 4 sides, but that's neither here nor there. You'll see how it all works. So just peel that off, and that'll give me approximately a 1-inch flap that will extend past the drywall. And now I'm going to do that with the remaining sides. So it does help to have a straight edge, in this case a level. They also make rulers that you can use to cut drywall. Whatever you have at home will work. So again, score it on the back, kind of peel it off the paper, and again, just because this drywall is so old and brittle, I'm using the knife to kind of separate them. I think having it painted also, it just made it a little bit more difficult. So you can see it's kind of coming apart there. That's okay because it's still sort of within the bounds of the area that I've drawn on here. Once again, score the back side, snap the drywall, and then try and peel the drywall off the front facing paper. And there's the side that I completely ruined. That's okay. I will work with what I've got. Perhaps I'll make another one when the COVID lockdown is over in February, and I'll try it with a brand new piece of drywall and see if I can do a better job. Anyway, score it, snap it, and then once again peel the drywall off the front face paper. So if you did a better job than me, you'd have 4 sides. However, as it turns out, this actually worked out very well. It's not a perfect example, but it's a 75% perfect example of what you need to do. Now before I screw that piece of drywall into the hole, I'm just going to butter it up with some of the drywall compound. And this drywall compound will ensure that when I put the new piece of drywall in, all those little air gaps are filled in, and then the drywall compound will dry out, and it'll be a nice solid backing, and I'll be able to screw into it and drill into it for a new toilet paper roll holder. Now, in addition to getting the drywall mud onto the wall side, I'm also going to put it on the flaps of the California patch that I'm putting in here. And again, this is just to ensure that I have full contact with the drywall compound. Insert the patch, and then I'm going to take some screws, and I'm going to use 4 screws, 2 into each of the shims to ensure that that patch is held firmly in place. Now that the screws are holding the patch in place, I'm going to use my drywall knife to ensure that the flaps are nice and flat. Basically, what you don't want is for that drywall compound to dry behind the flaps if those flaps are still raised, because you'll never get rid of that bump. You'll basically just have to take that patch back out. So get the flaps down tight, and then I'll do a thin spread of the drywall compound over the patch, and I'll let that dry overnight before sanding it. Really, at this point, I'm not too concerned with how it looks because I'm going to fix that later. I want it nice and flat. Now that I've waited about 12 hours, I'm good to sand this down a little bit and put another coat of mud on here. I'm not too concerned with getting it perfect. I just want to remove all the high ridges. I'm going to use a larger putty knife this time, so this is an 8-inch knife instead of the 6-inch knife, and that'll give me a little bit better coverage on the patch. Obviously, I'm using quite a lot of drywall compound, and for this I'm just trying to get a good coverage. I'm trying to get that drywall compound spread at least 4 or 5 inches past the edges of the patch that I put in, just to slowly make it less visible so I can blend it into the wall. Now that the patch is dried overnight one more time, I'm just going to take a sanding sponge, smooth it out a little bit, get all the high ridges off, try and get any of the air bubbles out, and just make it look a little bit more presentable prior to putting on my final top coat of drywall compound. For this, I'm going to use a 12-inch putty knife, and I'm going to do a thin but very wide spread of the drywall compound so that it looks nice and smooth, and I can get a very smooth transition from the wall to where the patch is located. And now that I've done this larger patch with the drywall compound, I'm going to let it dry overnight prior to doing the final sand. Now I'm going to use the Richards vac pole. I find this thing very, very good at ensuring there's no drywall dust. I'm also using the Richards branded drywall sanding pads. There are cheaper versions of them out there, but I find that the Richards ones are actually a little bit better. Now for sanding this, I really work those edges to make sure that the transition between the drywall and the area that I patched is smooth, and also that there's no bumps or lumps or air bubbles in the drywall patch. After using the pole vacuum attached to the shop vac, I do come around with the sanding sponge just to get a slightly finer sand on there and really blend in those edges. So there it is after I painted it. I did 1 coat of primer and 2 coats of paint. And quite honestly, I can't even tell where the hole was. So the California patch did a really good job, even though I did biff it up. Here's the paint I used. It's Regal Select by Benjamin Moore, and the color is Classic Gray. Now obviously this job took about 5 days to complete, but it wasn't very time consuming on any of those days. It was mainly just waiting for the drywall compound to dry. Anyway, I hope you found this helpful. Thanks for checking out my video. Don't forget to like and subscribe.